This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, Michael Covel. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion. (1964, 1965), Barry Maguire's The Eve of Destruction, going straight at all of the violence and war at the time in Southeast Asia. He wasn't happy, America wasn't happy, and Southeast Asia wasn't happy. And I believe that song was a #1 hit. But for many people, there's a permanent imprint. What happens at a certain time with music, never to change. Many Americans will always have only a negative feeling about a country like Vietnam. That's just the way it is. If that's how you think, so be it. But I am here today to give perspective, to give a different perspective and perhaps lessons that you might not expect to come from places that could have otherwise been controlled by military rule, communist leaders, etc. After all, we are Americans. We are capitalists. What the hell can we possibly learn from countries that have had utter chaos for decades, whose government structures are anything but democratic? How could we learn anything? We can learn a hell of a lot. Today, I will talk about some of those lessons. I will give some color and go into my experiences in one of these Southeast Asian countries that I had never been to before until just recently. Now, for many people, the experience of Southeast Asia is unknown. Maybe you know that Singapore is very wealthy, but maybe you've never been there. You've been to San Diego, but you can't imagine San Diego on steroids with a lot more money. 8,000 miles away from America. Or even Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Or Bangkok in Thailand. Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. Yangon in Myanmar. All of these faraway places. I think the average American can learn more from those faraway places than you can from anything currently going on in America. Now, of course, if you already have freedom and you have some wealth and you can travel, then what I will say today, you get it. You already understand. But for those of you that save up every year just to do the Jersey or North Carolina beach expedition, when you could go somewhere else and you could motivate the hell out of yourself and you could get energized and you could see opportunity in a whole new light versus the CNN and Fox constant 24/7 fight debate of Clinton, Sanders, Trump, Rubio, Cruz that will never broaden your horizons and never make you one freaking dollar. First, I want to read an article. This is from Simon Black of Sovereign Man. And he writes about Vietnam. Again, don't take your preconceived ideas into where I'm going today. I'm not trying to tell you to move to Vietnam, live in Vietnam, move to Thailand, move to Singapore. I'm not trying to tell you to do that. What I want you to do is try and feel the world from a different perspective. Try and understand how backwards the capitalistic country, the democratic country of America, how far America has gone off the rails, and what we can possibly learn from assorted countries across Southeast Asia. This is from Simon Black. Every time I come to Vietnam, I'm always astounded at the incredible growth and opportunity here. This time around, I'm reviewing a number of suppliers to buy raw materials for a new business we're acquiring in Australia. Just a few years ago, those supply contracts would have easily been awarded to companies in mainland China. But today, Vietnam is beating the pants off the Chinese. In large part due to China's long-term growth over the past 10 plus years, wages and input costs in mainland China have increased dramatically. China might still represent the best value for money when manufacturing high-end electronics like iPhones. But due to the rise in input cost, China can't compete when making socks or producing fabric. They're no longer cost competitive. That business is going to Vietnam, one of the cheapest places in Asia to produce. In many respects, Vietnam is the new China, or at least where China was a few decades ago. And for those of you that don't recall, and I need to interject this, Vietnam is 90 million people, 45 million under the age of 30. They weren't around for the Vietnam War, or as the Vietnamese like to refer to it, the American War. He continues, conversely, China's demographics are precariously upside down thanks to decades of its absurd one-child policy. This is going to be a huge problem down the road. Wages are much lower in Vietnam, and there's an enormous amount of manufacturing capacity. As a result, the country's exports have grown dramatically by as much as 3,000% in the last 2 decades. Much of that growth is from in the last few years. This economic growth is having a visible impact on the country. Every time I come here, it's noticeably better, more advanced, more developed, more modern, and more free. And for expats in particular, the country is amazing. Rent costs nothing, food costs nothing, domestic help costs nothing, mobile and broadband costs nothing. He's not exaggerating, by the way. The lifestyle you can achieve here on a very modest budget is incredible. And it's lots of fun here. Ho Chi Minh and Hanoi are both wonderful, thriving cities, along with Nha Trang, Hoi An, and Da Nang. Plus, Vietnam's coastline is one of the most exquisite on earth. Definitely put it on your bucket list. He's not exaggerating there either. I've been to a resort in Nha Trang, Vietnam. I will put it up against anything on the East Coast. The East Coast of America, that is. Absolutely beautiful. Vietnam may become one of the top expat destinations in the world as more people are drawn to the high quality, inexpensive lifestyle in a country with substantial opportunity. Last year, Vietnam's government continued its trend of loosening a number of restrictions. And in addition to making it easier for locals to work hard, produce, and thrive, they even made it much easier for foreigners to visit, stay, invest, acquire shares and property, etc. It's incredible that those opportunities exist today. It wasn't that long ago when Vietnam was one of the most closed, despotic, impoverished countries in the world. Things finally started to change in the late 1980s when the communist government opened up and encouraged private business ownership and free market incentives. There's still a long way to go. But the trend is obvious. Vietnam has gone from being the Cuba of Southeast Asia to a country with more opportunity, fewer restrictions, and one of the fastest growing middle classes in the world. It just goes to show how powerful freedom can be. Prosperity rises when a nation progresses from unfree to more free. Sadly, the opposite trend in freedom and prosperity is playing out in the West. He concludes by saying, keep Vietnam on your radar. It's definitely a trend you want to know about. He's 100% spot on with his analysis. But what he's really doing in that piece is taking a dig at USA policy, USA ambition, USA capitalism. He's pointing out that in a so-called communist country, the energy and enthusiasm is beating the pants off the world's #1 economy. And that leads me to my most recent trip in Southeast Asia. I went to Myanmar for 4 days. Myanmar, formerly Burma, a country of 50 million people. You know, a few years ago, Anthony Bourdain launched this new show on CNN. I admit to being a Bourdain fan. He launched this new show. His very first episode on his CNN travel show was to go to Myanmar. The episode was couched as a country closed for 50 years to the West. Now the borders had opened. This is all true. And he was going there with his film crew for the first time. He captured the sights and the scenes. And Bourdain is typically a positive guy, but he did make note that for the last 50 years, there had been chaos in Myanmar. Things had not been so good for the people there. But generally, as he does, he left a very positive, uplifting, motivational, the future can only be bright conclusion. So after a few years of being in and out of Southeast Asia, I decided to go ahead and take the plunge. Easy enough. You had to get a visa. The visa you could get online. The turnaround time was about 12 hours for an American. Not too bad. Easy enough flight. I took Vietnam Airlines. I will have to say, it is really cool to land into Myanmar, Yangon International Airport, because as you're landing and you look out over the landscape, the farming, the rice fields, and then in the distance, you'll see it. A gold pagoda in the middle of a field, and then another one, and then another one. And you start to realize this feels a little different. Something feels a little different here. I want to give a little history, because that was the point of playing Barry Maguire's Eve of Destruction at the beginning of this episode. We all have these permanent imprints about what a country is, what goes on in that country, and what we can possibly learn from that country. And yes, I know if you're 8,000 miles away from a place like Burma, and you're thinking, Mike, I can't go there. I can't go have that experience. You waste money on nonsense all the time. Just go. I promise you, just go. Get on a plane and stop making excuses. Some brief history on Myanmar, formerly Burma, formerly British Burma. Colonialized by the British, 1824 to 1948, over 100 years. You can still feel the British influence, especially on the street system, the road layout. It reminds me a lot of Singapore and Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, where the British also had an influence. They got their independence in 1948, but a military coup in 1962, that's when Bourdain refers to the borders being closed off for 50 years. And then finally, around 2011, 2012, they opened the borders to foreigners again. And in 2015, they've recently had elections, their first democratic elections. And people are really happy. You can feel that. Look, it's a poor country still. But they're selling luxury goods. There are construction cranes everywhere. You can feel the enthusiasm. 50 million people. I was trying to explain to my father what it feels like to land in Yangon, Myanmar. And to give some kind of connection to an American understanding. I said, it's like those Rust Belt cities in America where people once were there and then they all leave and it feels like a shell of itself, but the city still stands, but the people are all gone. It's like that in Myanmar. Except the people aren't all gone. The people are everywhere. So the infrastructure is rough. But again, with those construction cranes going up, the new office buildings, the new hotels, the new airport. You could just feel the enthusiasm. I look at their old train station. I shot some video of it, took a ton of pictures, right in the heart of their downtown. Fascinating to see the old rail work once set up by the British. Many of the trains are a little rough around the edges, but many of them are brand new, but the tracks are clearly beaten down. But again, it's not what you see in a place like Myanmar with your eyes in the right now. It's where they're clearly going. And at some point in time in the not too distant future, there will start to be articles about the millionaires and the billionaires being minted in Myanmar. Now, I can't give you any great insight today about where to invest in Myanmar. That's not the point. The point is the excitement. I miss that excitement in America. Sure, there's places in Silicon Valley where people are freaking making things happen. They're inventing new stuff. Damn, it's exciting. I know it's there. But overall, through a combination of, frankly, out of control state power, America has lost the enthusiasm to drive themselves, to drive their friends, their family, their communities, to make new and big things happen. Put your Indiana Jones hat on. Put your cowboy hat on. Pretend you're an explorer. Don't do the typical American vacation. Don't do the typical European vacation. Go somewhere where the energy and enthusiasm, and look, I walked miles and miles of back streets in Myanmar. I mean, this is one of the most diverse populations you can ever imagine. It's essentially where India meets China. 135 different ethnicities? Are you kidding me? And that's not an exaggeration. I think I could walk by 135 people on the street and see all 135 ethnicities in 5 minutes. People get all worked up about race in America. Myanmar is a melting pot like you've never seen before. It might be the first place in my life where I've seen somebody and I look at them genetically and I look at them anthropologically and I say, wow, are they 30% Asian, 30% Indian, 30% African? And the drive for commerce is everywhere. Everyone is selling. Everyone is hustling. You don't hustle, you don't eat. There is no massive state welfare program. You gotta hustle. Let me touch on a few of the highlights. Shwedagon Pagoda. This is this classic gold pagoda. It's in the center of the city, Yangon, on a hill. You can't miss it. It's absolutely gorgeous. I think they said it's 60 tons of real gold. Absolutely amazing. Yeah. There's been some bad press in the last couple of years, but if you really read about the bad press, it's relatively small. At first blush, since the city is so dark, they don't have as many streetlights, you feel a little out of sort at night. You sort of feel like, wow, this is a little too dark here. But then once you start to get a feel for the city, it's fine. If you're going to stay somewhere, I recommend the Shangri-La in downtown Yangon. Beautiful service, nice food. Rooms are okay. It's a little pricey, but hey, it's a great place to be when you're not familiar with a new country and a new city. Go stay at the nicest hotel there. I also want to say something about the people. I can't tell you how many times I would just smile at somebody. It could be a girl, it could be a guy, and the smiles that you would get back, amazing. A really friendly place, super friendly. We don't have that in America, not as much. If I go to the countryside, sure. If I'm in a more rural area, sure. But the cities in America, come on, man, people aren't like that anymore. It's so nice. It's so refreshing. And look, as I give this great overview of a unique place to travel to, a unique place to try and learn some of those old lessons that Americans once had, I can't predict the exact future of Myanmar. There's no doubt in the short term, they're going to get there fast. All those cranes across that city, a lot of commerce is going to happen. Unfortunately, when I see things like KFC, I also know bad things are going to happen too, because KFC equals all those great physiques on the ladies of Myanmar that I see walking the streets. Stay away from that KFC. And that is my last point that I want to make. I was in Myanmar with a lady friend of mine, and she was the first one to comment. She said, my gosh, these women are beautiful. I looked back at her, and she's good looking too. And I said, yeah, they really are. And I might have just been in the city where I think I saw per capita more beauty, more beautiful faces than anywhere else in the world that I've been to so far. Everyone thinks they know where they're going. They think they've had the right education. But throw the sabbatical at yourself. Change everything. Jump in. Go do something that you never would have expected that you would find yourself doing. But get on a plane and go. There are places across Asia that right when you land, you will feel what's wrong with capitalism in America. Because there is something wrong with it. There's definitely something wrong with it. And many people don't talk about this, but the real issue with capitalism in America, from my perspective, is the stranglehold of local regulation at the town, the city, the county, and the state level. We have made the ability to do and achieve anything so damn hard. You have to pay this nonsensical tax. You have to pay this personal property tax. All of this absolute nonsense that keeps most people from ever starting. Maybe that's where I'm really trying to go today. It's a tough picture to paint. But what I love about and what I get motivated about seeing so many of these cultures, so many of these different cultures, these different types of peoples, is their drive. They have to do it, and they're not being stopped. And maybe they've got to work around the edges and they've got to kind of break a few rules, but who gives a shit? They're making something happen. Too many of us in America are playing by all the rules. Those damn rules need to be broken. Those rules were set up by bureaucratic monsters. People sitting in your local town government hall, your local city council, your local state government buildings, they're sitting there year after year, year after year, developing and thinking up what regulation they can put on top of you to control you. You think I'm exaggerating? If you think I'm exaggerating, you don't know. You don't have any idea how much office space is used in your town, your city, your state to house government employees. How many government employees are there per capita? All of this is a killer to capitalism. So you see, when you talk about these foreign lands far away, one that's currently communist, one that used to be under military rule, don't get confused by the government descriptions. Don't get confused by that nonsense. Look what's happening on the ground. Look at the people. Look at the commerce. America calls itself a democracy. America calls itself capitalistic. Do you really think that's still true? And if you can't change it, We all like to hope that it can change. But at some point in time, that hope, that eternal hope, is it not just delusion? Is it not a psychosis? It's up to you to go make something happen. It's up to you to try harder. Don't let the system control you. Don't let the system eat you. Why is it so important to fight back? Because the system is rigged. And I almost forgot to add this fantastic few-minute excerpt from the comedian George Carlin. Bless his heart. But for a comedian, this guy sure as hell knew what was happening and what was going on. And in this crazy political season, currently underway in America, from the dead, Carlin offers insight.
There's a reason education sucks, and it's the same reason that it will never, ever, ever be fixed. It's never going to get any better. Don't look for it. Be happy with what you got. Because the owners of this country don't want that. I'm talking about the real owners now. The real owners, the big wealthy business interests that control things and make all the important decisions. Forget the politicians. The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you. They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets. And they own all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the balls. They spend billions of dollars every year lobbying to get what they want. Well, we know what they want. They want more for themselves and less for everybody else. But I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want well-informed, well-educated people capable of critical thinking. They're not interested in that. That doesn't help them. That's against their interest. That's right. They don't want people who are smart enough to sit around the kitchen table and figure out how badly they're getting fucked by a system that threw them overboard 30 fucking years ago. They don't want that. You know what they want? They want obedient workers. Obedient workers. People who are just smart enough to run the machines and do the paperwork, and just dumb enough to passively accept all these increasingly shittier jobs with the lower pay, the longer hours, the reduced benefits, the end of overtime, and the vanishing pension that disappears the minute you go to collect it. And now they're coming for your Social Security money. They want your fucking retirement money. They want it back, so they can give it to their criminal friends on Wall Street. And you know something? They'll get it. They'll get it all from you sooner or later, because they own this fucking place. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. You and I are not in the big club. And by the way, it's the same big club they used to beat you over the head with all day long when they tell you what to believe. All day long, beating you over the head in their media, telling you what to believe, what to think, and what to buy. The table is tilted, folks. The game is rigged. And nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to care. Good, honest, hard-working people, white collar, blue collar, doesn't matter what color shirt you have on. Good, honest, hard-working people continue. These are people of modest means. Continue to elect these rich cocksuckers who don't give a fuck about them. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't care about you at all. At all. At all. Yeah. You know? And nobody seems to notice, nobody seems to care. That's what the owners count on, the fact that Americans will probably remain willfully ignorant of the big red, white, and blue dick that's being jammed up their assholes every day. Because the owners of this country know the truth. It's called the American dream, because you have to be asleep to believe it.
Prove George Carlin wrong. I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up, down, and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash or just trying to make a lot of money, trend following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times. To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will send you the right trend following steps to take along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.